Hello, in this video, we're focusing on the practical concepts that you can actually apply in the real business world. Hope you enjoy it. Let's get on with it. Let's start by considering some striking possibilities. What if the price of oil suddenly surged to $200 a barrel? That would cause major disruptions, like long lines for petrol stretching across European cities, and global stock markets could see massive losses running into trillions in just a matter of days. These aren't just hypothetical scenarios anymore. With rising tensions around Iran, the potential for conflict has become a very real concern for the global economy in 2026. As you look at these images, you can see a vibrant stock exchange board reflecting market activity, fuel pumps representing everyday energy needs, and scenes of conflict that remind us how geopolitical events can ripple through financial systems worldwide. This sets the stage for us to explore how such a war could destabilize oil supply, impact markets, and affect everyday life on a global scale. Tensions around Iran have grown significantly due to its nuclear program, regional power struggles, and changing alliances in the Middle East. The Strait of Hormuz, a critical sea route for much of the world's oil, is especially vulnerable. As global powers adjust their positions and regional players push limits, the chance of direct conflict involving Iran is increasingly real. This situation puts the global economy at risk because energy markets, supply chains, inflation, and geopolitical factors are all connected. Any conflict near Iran wouldn't stay local. It would send shockwaves through economies worldwide, affecting everything from oil prices to economic stability. The central challenge we face is that a conflict involving Iran could have widespread economic effects at a time when the global economy is already fragile. Inflation is still a concern, supply chains haven't fully stabilized, and international alliances are becoming more rigid. One major vulnerability is the concentration of oil supply, particularly through the Strait of Hormuz, which handles about 20% of the world's oil shipments. If this choke point is disrupted in any way, even temporarily, oil prices could surge sharply, driving up costs everywhere and adding significant strain to economies worldwide. This situation highlights just how interconnected and exposed the global economy is to geopolitical tensions in this region. The Middle East is a crucial hub for global shipping, with critical trade routes passing through this region. Any conflict here could block these maritime pathways, leading to higher insurance costs for shipping and causing delays in global trade. At the same time, many major economies are still fragile, recovering unevenly from the inflation shock seen in the early 2020s. If another supply-to-side crisis hits, it could push these economies back towards recession. So, the central challenge isn't just whether a conflict would disrupt trade and markets, but how quickly and severely that disruption would spread, affecting economies worldwide. The oil market is currently tight because there hasn't been enough investment in exploring new sources, while OPEC plus production decisions and growing global demand add further pressure. If conflict breaks out involving Iran, we could see prices spike immediately as traders react to the uncertainty and risks to supply. Beyond just price increases, physical shortages could occur if oil tankers are blocked, attacked, or forced to take longer routes. This would have ripple effects, pushing up natural gas prices, electricity costs, and impacting industrial output. If prices stay above $150 to $200 per barrel for a prolonged period, it would force a rapid revision of global economic forecasts, affecting everything from inflation to growth projections. The Strait of Hormuz, being just 21 miles wide at its narrowest, is a critical choke point for global shipping. Even small conflicts in this area could force ships to take longer, less direct routes, significantly delaying deliveries by days or even weeks. This increased risk would drive up insurance costs for vessels passing through, as insurers seek to cover potential losses, making shipments more expensive. Additionally, many shipping companies might choose to avoid this high-risk zone altogether, reducing the overall capacity available for moving goods. The combined effect of these disruptions would mirror the supply chain chaos experienced between 2020 and 2022, but this time it would be centered around energy supplies, amplifying the economic impact worldwide. Central banks have been focused on controlling inflation for several years, but a conflict-driven energy shock could quickly reverse that progress, reigniting inflation across multiple regions, including Europe, Asia, and the Americas. This puts central banks in a difficult spot, where they must either raise interest rates to curb inflation, risking a recession, or accept higher inflation, which could lead to economic instability. At the same time, government borrowing costs would rise, which is especially problematic for those already dealing with high debt levels. The situation is made even more challenging because many economies are only just starting to stabilize after the inflation shocks of the early 2020s, so the timing couldn't be worse for facing new inflationary pressures. This chart here, showing a sharp upward trend, reflects the potential increase in borrowing costs and inflationary pressures that could severely disrupt economic recovery efforts worldwide. A conflict in the Middle East would significantly disrupt international trade and investment. Countries that rely heavily on importing energy would experience serious balance of payments problems as energy costs rise and supply becomes uncertain. At the same time, economies that depend on exports could face a sharp drop in demand if global growth slows down due to the conflict. Investors tend to avoid higher risk regions during periods of instability, so foreign investment in these areas would likely decline, causing even more economic volatility. Because the global economy is highly interconnected, a shock in this region would have widespread effects, reaching every continent through trade routes, financial markets, and investment flows. If military action leads to the Strait of Hormuz being partially or fully closed, the impact would be severe and immediate. Oil prices could spike dramatically, reaching between $200 and $250 per barrel within just a few days, driven by the sudden disruption in supply. Stock markets would likely react harshly, potentially dropping 10 to 20% in a single week, which could erase trillions of dollars in market value. At the same time, global shipping could come to a virtual standstill, causing a collapse in supply chains that many industries and consumers depend on. This would amplify the already fragile economic conditions, disrupting trade and investment flows worldwide. The images here help illustrate these points visually. A person facing a display board filled with sharp drops, symbolizing market turmoil, financial graphics highlighting rising cost and inflation, and a large cargo ship, representing the critical flow of goods that would grind to a halt in this worst-case scenario. Together, these elements underline how interconnected and vulnerable the global economy would be in such a crisis. If inflation surges back into double digits, central banks would need to act quickly with emergency measures. At the same time, major economies could slip into recession all at once, causing a synchronized global downturn that would affect everyday life. People would feel the impact through higher fuel prices, rising food costs, shortages of important goods, and increasing energy bills. This scenario represents a critical tipping point where the global economy is pushed to its limits, not because of financial mistakes, but due to escalating geopolitical tensions. Environment worldwide, with sharp economic and social consequences. A conflict involving Iran would quickly move beyond being a regional issue and become a global economic event with wide-reaching impacts. We're talking about disruptions to oil markets that would ripple through global inflation rates, shipping routes, and ultimately consumer prices everywhere. As of 2026, the world is particularly vulnerable. Energy supplies are tight, international alliances are shifting, and economic strength varies greatly across countries. This means the risk of serious disruption is very real. The key question is whether the global economy is ready to handle a shock like this. Based on what we see now, the answer is unclear, and the potential consequences could be significant and complex. Given the possible global economic impact we've discussed, I'm interested in hearing your thoughts. Could a conflict involving Iran really push the global economy to the edge by 2026? Sharing your perspective in the comments will help deepen the conversation. If you found this analysis useful, consider subscribing. There will be more detailed explorations on geopolitics, economic strategy, and how these forces shape the world's markets. Your engagement makes these discussions richer and more insightful. If you found this video useful, there's plenty of more business and finance videos on the channel that you'll enjoy watching and get great practical value from. In the meantime, thanks for watching.